Take me through the 12 unit. That was your segue into multifamily. What is happening, best ever community? This is Matt Faircloth, and I am your brand new host for the best ever CRE show. Best ever listeners, our guest today is a good friend of mine. I've known this man for years through conferences and through a lot of different conversations, interviews, and podcasts. Michael Blanc is a former project manager, very smart guy. But what you don't see is Michael is also a former pizza franchise entrepreneur. But hey, got into real estate, got the real estate bug like a lot of us did, and now running a large real estate portfolio, including a podcast called Financial Freedom with Real Estate, which is a great show. Been lucky enough to be on that show as a guest, and it is something that best ever listeners you should check out as well as you look to expand your real estate exposure and knowledge. Best ever listeners, welcome to the show, my good friend Michael Blanc. Michael, how are you today?
Hello, Matt. Great to be here.
How are you today, man?
Doing great, man. Good to see you.
So you, a lot of onesie, twosie singles. Where did your light bulb go on? Was it just like, okay, I smashed my head up against this brick wall for the 300th time, and I'm realizing this hurts and I don't want to do it just small anymore? Or at some point you had an aha moment, which was to scale a little bit bigger. What was that like?
It's a great question. I don't remember the exact moment. All I know is it took me 3 dozen flips to finally go, wait a minute. It was a little bit of a combination. It was a little bit of a combination because I accidentally got into a 12 unit in Washington, D.C. One of my wholesalers brought it to me. I did some commercial real estate training in 2006, developed the analyzer at the time. I did this deal, this 12 unit, which was a nightmare in itself. But when it finally calmed down 18 months later, it became super boring. It was sending me $1,500 per month in mailbox money. And that coincided with my 36th house. And I finally looked at and I was like, I haven't thought about this apartment building in a few weeks. Well, wait a minute, there's a $1,500 check in there. What if I stopped doing this and started doing more of that? Instead of flipping houses, my bright idea was to stop selling and build a rental portfolio. Yeah. If I can get them to cash flow $200 a month, I would need 50 houses. I just spent 3 years flipping 3 dozen. I'd need 5 dozen or 4 dozen. And I'm like, dude, that's insane to me. Meanwhile, I had this thing. All I needed is maybe another few deals, maybe something a little bigger because I felt it was a little small. And to me, all I need is another handful of deals and I will be where I want to be versus 50 plus rental houses. So to me, that light bulb went off and that's kind of when I started to shift. But I had a lot of, what I call stinking thinking in my brain where it still took a long while for me to actually go, yes, I can do this. I had a light bulb moment, but I didn't actually turn into a strategy right then and there.
You had said stinking thinking, your brain only allowed you to get but so far and everything like that. Talk me through that. You control yourself thousands of units of multifamily, as do a lot of the folks in your network, in your circle. What's the difference, man? The guy doing 2 or 3 fix and flips and owning a couple of rentals versus the person that owns thousands of units of multifamily. It's not education. It's not knowledge. It's not even money, right? Because you could syndicate that money. It's probably comes back to mindset. What's the difference? Like put those next to each other.
I'll tell you what, I felt like I got this a little bit by accident. So I wasn't talking to brokers. The last time I talked to brokers when I was taking this commercial real estate class was in 2006. I was calling brokers in Texas. And they weren't taking me seriously because I didn't have any apartment building track record. And so I wasn't getting anywhere. So I put a pin in it, like I said earlier. So when I did this deal, I was like, man, I don't know if I call brokers, they're not going to take me seriously. Plus, all my money was deployed. I didn't have any money. I just didn't feel like I could do it. And I also felt like I needed maybe 100 units for this thing. I felt like I needed a lot of units. So I was still a bit overwhelmed by the whole thing. If I look back on it right now, the biggest difference in mindset is this book by Dan Sullivan called Who Not How. And if you've read it before, it's if you want to do anything of any kind of scale, and anything that goes beyond you in any way whatsoever, instead of asking, how do I do this? You got to start asking, who is going to help me do that, right? So instead of me saying, how am I going to find this deal? How am I going to pick the right market? How am I going to analyze deals? How do I raise capital? I was asking the wrong question. I should have asked, who is going to help me do this thing? If you shift that mindset, magical things start to happen. For example, who could be an advisor? I got to find someone who can look over my shoulder, encourage me, hold me accountable, maybe a coach or a mentor, someone who's more experienced. Number one. Number two, I need to build a team around me. If I call a broker and I say, hey, my name is Michael, they'll say, great, how many apartments do you have? I said, well, none, but I flipped a couple houses and I have a rental. He goes, well, how about this, Michael? You send me your proof of funds and I'll send you a deal.
Yeah.
I've hired a property management company, XYZ. They manage 5,000 units in Dallas. I got Ben over here. They underwrote $1 billion of loans last week. Now we're talking about the collective team. Because I have a team around me, who, not how, right? And if I am a deal finder and I'm underwriting deals, talking to brokers, and I'm struggling with raising money because I'm not really much of a relationship guy, then there's going to be someone with access to capital. They're capital raisers, right? There's a bunch of those out there. So why should I struggle on how to raise money when all I need to do is find a who? So I didn't learn this until much later. I'm just telling you from a mindset perspective, it changes everything. Absolutely.
Huge mindset pop in that you don't have to do it all yourself. And those that own a couple single family rentals, maybe best ever listeners, this is you. And that's okay. Michael and I are talking to you with love here. Maybe the reason why you've done a couple flips and a couple rentals is because you're trying to do it all yourself. And I find that the more you hone in on that, you can tell Michael and I are both readers, right? To cite another book, The One Thing, right? Figure out what the one thing that you ought to be doing in your business and focus on that, drill into that. And that's just what your God-given talent is, what your skill is, what your unique ability is, depending on whatever language you want to call it. That's what that is. Lean into it and do just that. And surround yourself by people that are good at other things, not what you're good at, maybe things that you're not good at, and let them do that as well. So Mike, I want to rewind because you touched on that 12 unit, right? I've known you for a while, so I know the 12 unit was a good stepping stone, good initial deal, but you've told me in the past that it didn't work out too well. You know, made a lot of mistakes. How did it, tell me, unpack it real quick. What did you learn on it? Mistakes always have lessons woven in, right? Take me through the 12 unit. That was your segue into multifamily.
When you go from single family to multifamily, there's like two types of people. I was a little bit of both. The one person, the first category is, I don't think I can do this. There's limiting beliefs around ability to do it. Okay. Yep. Once I got over that, because I'm an action taker, there's a second problem, and that is a huge need to do things yourself. Because I'm smart and I can figure all these things out. I would call it a bit of arrogance. So the fundamental mistake I made with that 12 unit is I went in there with a bunch of arrogance saying, I don't know everything, but I'm going to figure it out. Why do that when there is a bunch of who's who can greatly help you on your endeavor? If I had a senior advisor, they would have told me not to buy anything in Washington, D.C. because of the pro-tenant laws. Sure enough, when I get in there, I discovered, after I closed, of course, I had a professional tenant in there. And the least thing that he was doing was not paying rents. What he was doing to the previous owner, was suing them constantly. So he started suing me for everything. He was calling the permit people, the compliance people. When an inspector comes by, they're going to write you up. So I'm getting fined. It was a nightmare. Even though I had permits pulled, it was awful. Why? Because I didn't know. And then the second thing is I hired the wrong property manager. Why? Because I didn't know any better. This was a Section 8 building. I did not hire a Section 8 property manager. He couldn't deal with the tenants. He couldn't deal with the inspectors. And that took me a year to figure out until I finally found someone in there who has experience with Section 8 tenants and the housing authority. And within 3 months, the problem was gone. I made all of these mistakes typically because I had a do-it-yourself mentality that I got from the single family house space. And this is the biggest catch I see. Two things. One, I don't believe I can do this. And then number two, when you do wrap your head around, it's like, I'll figure it out. I don't need any help.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you realize that you need help and you realize who can get it for you is when things really pop. And so my bet is that when you start bringing in that property manager that knows how to handle Section 8, because I've owned a handful of Section 8 properties as well, it is a different animal. Just meaning the way the rents gets collected and dealing with authorities that govern Section 8 and stuff like that. I'm not talking about the tenants. I'm just talking about the system, right? The way that the system works for Section 8. There is a certain way to understand that. And if your property manager doesn't, you got the wrong who. Just an example of getting the right who in the right seats. Some of us know the rest of the story, that you were able to figure that out, taught you quite a bit, and then you scaled up into larger and larger multifamily assets to be where Nighthawk, your acquisitions and property management company, or your real estate ownership syndication company is now.